Hello to everyone. Today, I'm going to share with you what research process is all about. Before we discuss the research process, let us first clarify the meaning of a process and its importance. According to dictionary.com, process is a systematic series of actions directed to some end. For Collins Dictionary, process is a series of actions which are carried out to achieve a particular result. In both definitions, we can see common aspects. One, process involves steps. And number two, these steps direct us or guide us towards our goals or our purpose. Process keeps one focused in attaining the goals and objectives of an action. It describes the steps to carry out an activity. It tells us how things are to be done. Now that we know the meaning of a process, we are now ready to apply it in our research. So what is research process? Research process involves a series of steps to arrive at the solution to our problem. So as you see in the figure, research starts with a problem, and then there are a series of steps to undertake in order to arrive at our answer. Now that we know the meaning of a process and its importance, we are now ready to apply it in research. What you see on your screen is a detailed presentation of the steps involved in doing or conducting research. The research process always starts with identifying the problem and then reviewing literature so you will know more about the problem that you want to work on. And then after extensive review of literature, you are now going to raise your hypotheses if you are conducting a quantitative study. And then if you are working on a qualitative study, this is the stage where you now write your specific questions. After hypotheses and specific questions, you will now design your study, and designing the study involves your research methods. Research methods that will describe the procedures that you're going to carry out to gather data, including the research instruments. And then after designing your data, you are ready now to gather the information that you need or the data that you need to answer your problem. And then after data gathering, if you are conducting a quantitative study, you will now analyze the data that you gathered using statistics. And for qualitative study, there are analysis techniques that you can choose from depending upon the kind of qualitative study that you have raised. A separate discussion of the data analysis for both quantitative and qualitative study will be presented in another video. And then after you analyze and interpret your data, your results or findings will lead you to conclusions or generalizations. Here, you're going to test your hypothesis, whether you affirm it or you reject the hypothesis that you have raised earlier. And then after your conclusions, you're now ready for your recommendations. Take note that the first step always involves identifying a problem or stating objectives. Remember that you're conducting a research because there's a problem or a difficulty or a gap which you want to solve or attempt to solve in your study. The problem you have identified should be clear to you. If not, you need to do substantial reading or interview significant individuals to acquire full information of your problem at hand. After problem identification, the next thing to do or the next step is to search for articles or studies related to your problem. The Google is a rich source of related literature and studies that you can read. However, you must choose sources from reputable websites and accredited journals. And some suggestions for readings are those published in Google Scholar, Elsevier, Scopus Index journals, journals with digital object identifiers or DOIs, journals with high impact factors, SHED accredited journals, scholarly peer-reviewed articles, and books. You have to remember also the recency of your related studies and literature that uh, for now what is acceptable is either 10 years back. So if it's 2021, you can include the studies conducted or published in 2011. What is the importance of a literature review? Number one, it provides foundation knowledge of the topic at hand. Number two, it identifies areas of prior scholarship to prevent duplication and give credit to other researchers. Number three, it identifies inconsistencies, gaps in research, conflicts in previous studies, open questions left from another research. Number four, identifies the need for additional research, which now justifies your own study. Number five, identifies the relationship of works in context of its contribution to the topic and to other works. And number six, literature review places your own research within the context of literature, making a case of why the study is conducted. The next step after literature review is raising hypotheses if you are doing a quantitative study, because quantitative study will yield the data that are measurable. Hence, your tentative answer will be tested using statistical formulas. And if you're doing a qualitative study, this is the stage where you develop specific questions, because in a qualitative study, you will be gathering narrative data, and narrative data cannot be tested. Instead, you write the specific questions that will guide you in developing instruments that will gather the appropriate data to answer your research problem. After raising hypotheses and developing questions, the next step is to design the study. The design of research refers to practical way in which the research is to be conducted in accordance with a systematic attempt to generate evidence to answer our research problem. Designing the study is the methodology part of a research report. Here, you will present your research design, locale, respondents, tools to gather data, data analysis techniques, and procedures to gather data. A separate video will be shown to discuss on designing the study. After designing your study, you are now ready to gather data. Just few reminders that in gathering data, you need to observe proper ethics, meaning you need to get permits or permission from authorities governing the area or locale of your study. For example, if you need to gather data from respondents residing within a town, you get the permission of a mayor. If respondents will only be in a barangay, you need to get the permit of the barangay captain. Or if you're conducting a study within a company, of course, you get the permission of the president or owner or the manager. But the permission does not end there. You have to specifically go to your respondents and then explain to them your research, the objectives, and the benefits of your research, and then you get an informed consent if your respondents are adults. and assent if you need to involve minors in your study. Both assent and informed consent are evidence that your participants are voluntarily participating in your study. Once data gathering is completed, we are now ready to analyze and interpret them. In this stage, you might need the expertise of statisticians to properly guide you on how to tabulate and how to use statistics for the data analysis. Uh, some students having thesis or conducting thesis seek statisticians because they have software or statistical software that can facilitate the easier and faster processing of the data that they have gathered. And I also suggest that you seek the help of statisticians so that you will be properly guided, you will be uh, choosing the right statistical measure or formula to analyze the data that you've gathered so that you'll come up with an accurate result or finding that will lead you to conclusions and recommendations. Finally, we are now down to our last step, which is drawing conclusions and recommendations. Remember that in giving our conclusions, we must base it on our findings, and then to check if our conclusions are correct, we have to again look at our research problem, and if our conclusions shed light or answer our research problems, then we are on the right track. We either reject or accept our hypothesis. Our conclusions will now be the basis for our recommendations, and our recommendations are our contributions to the existing knowledge about the study at hand or the field in our specializations that we have worked on in our research. So that's the end of our presentation. If you're going to summarize what we have presented, the research process involves 7 steps. One is identification of your problem or statement of your objectives. Second is your literature review. And then after your literature review, you can raise your hypothesis. After raising your hypothesis, you can now design your study. After designing your study, you can now gather your data. Then after data gathering, you can now analyze and interpret your data. After data analysis and interpretation, you now have your conclusions and your recommendations. Remember that your recommendations are your contributions to the field of study that you are working on. Remember that your purpose in conducting research is to solve problems, and the solutions to these problems should be found in your recommendations. So that's all for today, and I hope that your knowledge about research process has increased, and you are now ready to embark in doing your research proposals. Do not forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Alma M. Corpus. Goodbye. Have a nice day, everyone.